Thank you all for joining. We're here to welcome you so much for the modern offensive security approach to testing and hearing from Personio's strategy. So thank you so much for hopping on today. We're really excited to hear from our expert guest today, Arnau. Just to share as well for expectations, we will have 2 polls throughout the webinar today. Please feel free to participate. We'd love to hear from you guys. And there'll also be a Q&A at the end. So as you have questions, feel free to submit them in the Q&A box. You'll find that at the very bottom of your Zoom screen there. And we're so happy to be with you all. I'm going to share a little bit about myself. I don't love to talk about myself, but you want to probably know a little bit about who is speaking today. My name is Megan. I'm hosting my first webinar, so thanks for bearing with me. I'm a strategic customer success manager here and team lead at Cobalt. I've been at Cobalt for over 4 years, and I have nothing but good things to say. Before this, I had 4 years of experience in cybersecurity as well in customer success. What I love about CS is building deep partnerships with my customers, advocating on their behalf, and really understanding their business objectives. I'm very pleased to introduce you now to today's wonderful guest speaker and security professional, Arnau. Arnau is a lead security engineer at Personio, a software development company that specializes in all things HR management. Arnau, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you share a little bit about yourself for the group?
Sure. Thanks, Megan. So yes, my name is Arnau Estebanell. I'm based in sunny Barcelona, and I'm a lead security engineer for Personio. My experience is primarily focused on incident response, digital forensics, and the majority of my time in application security. In previous jobs, I've been able to work with different types of security setups, ranging from security boutique companies, big corporations, and now startup/scale-up with Personio. I also have extensive experience in pen testing, being a pen tester in the past and having helped previous and current employers define a pen testing strategy, both internal and externally managed. You're muted, Megan.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much for sharing, Arnau. Truly an impressive background you have. Additionally, in previous conversations that we've had to share, I know you've also been, from a pen tester to now an offensive security engineer. So you clearly have a deep understanding of defensive security principles. I can see how this background really gives you a strong foundation in this space. Would you also please share with us a little bit about your approach to offensive security in general and really how you've helped establish this at Personio?
Definitely, yeah. We can go to the next slide, and I'll first introduce Personio, and then yeah. So, what is Personio? So first of all, Personio is an HR software company dedicated to simplifying and streamlining people processes for small and medium-sized businesses. Our mission is to enable organizations to focus on what matters most, which is their people, by providing an all-in-one platform that covers everything from recruiting and onboarding to payroll and performance management. Personio actually started back in 2015 in Munich when a group of friends realized just how complicated HR could be for small and mid-sized companies, and they thought there has to be a better way. When my friends ask me, like, but what is exactly Personio? I tell them it is the HR application they can use to upload their sick absences, check their salary and payroll slips, and give feedback to their colleagues, amongst other things. Fast forward to today, Personio has grown a lot. What started as a small team is now a company with offices across Europe and thousands of customers. And along the way, we have raised major funding and become one of Europe's leading HR tech companies. Nevertheless, the goal is still the same, make HR as easy and efficient as possible. Yeah, we can go to the next one.
Yeah, really cool history at Personio Arnau. Thank you. Awesome. It's really the meat of why we're all here today, a unified offensive security program. Like, what is that and what does it look like? For us at Cobalt, a modern offensive security program is unified, right? It's thinking about everything, all the parts. It's inclusive of layers of your business from code to business, from code to company, to build confidence in your defenses. It's continuously evaluating your software products and your infrastructure. At Cobalt, This is a type of program that could look like securing your products through pen tests like web application, mobile pen tests, or AI and LLM engagements, as well as securing your network through network pen tests, your infrastructure through network pen tests, and securing your company brand through things like a digital risk assessment and a red team engagement. This continuous approach really allows you to innovate confidently, ensuring security is an enabler instead of a blocker. It helps you shift from a reactive approach to proactive strategy that really secures your business end to end. Arnau, what do you think about this continuous testing approach, and what does an offensive security program mean to you and Personio?
Yeah. Not having continuous testing is not an option anymore. That's my opinion.
Right.
I think if you look like, I don't know, 15 years ago maybe, how software was built and released is they would spend like maybe 3 months developing a new release. That release would be announced. It would be security tested. Then it would be shipped to the customers. Customers would use it. So let's say the SSDLC was more simple, right? Or had more
Mhm.
defined timelines. Um, Nowadays, production code changes every hour, right? We'll have hundreds and hundreds of deployments every day at Personio. And of course, our security controls need to keep up with the speed of development. We can be a blocker or slow them down, rather we need to be an enabler. Um,
Mhm.
in my point of view, an offensive security program is the part of the security program that focuses on simulating real world attacks, right? What we want is that the ethical good guys identify and report vulnerabilities so we can fix them before the bad guys can actually exploit them. Traditionally, the offensive security part is the part of the security program that sits at the end of the SSDLC, right? You have all the proactive controls, you have all the security testing in the pipeline, and then at the end you do the pen test or the bug bounty. And one of the goals for Personio, and also something that I'm personally excited about, is how to move this offensive security testing as early as possible in the SSDLC process. For Personio, the defensive security program includes both our pen testing and bug bounty programs, where we request and allow pen testers and researchers to hack our application in a legal and ethical way. Another vector we're
Mhm.
also seeing is the one of clone websites and social media, right? More likely to run phishing attacks against our customer base. Having a proper attack surface management where they're telling you like, hey, be careful, your logo has been seen in this website, which was a domain that was acquired 3 days ago, or this new Instagram account has popped up, which is using the same visuals as your company. It's super important, and it's something that allows you to proactively close these gaps, which could lead to real damage to the company's reputation.
Absolutely, Arnau. Thank you for walking us through your definition of an offensive security program and what you're working towards. I think you're absolutely right. At least on my end of customer conversations, customers are often working toward that goal of moving testing earlier in the SDLC cycle. And getting into this cadence really does truly give confidence that you're protecting assets from a vulnerability and brand perspective with early identification of exploits. So let's talk about the key components of an offensive security program. To me, a successful offensive security program takes that layered approach that we were talking about, and it's leaving nothing unturned. So critical assets undergo that thorough review while validating the security of new releases, so like feature releases, while also validating the security of new features as you roll them out, and detecting vulnerabilities between pen tests with automated tools like ASM, like attack service management tools, and a dynamic application security testing tool or DAST. With this strategy, teams can be more proactive in managing their security posture and develop a predictable cadence of testing that aligns to their application, network, and corporate security. Are these key components that you're incorporating as well, or do you think of it this way?
Definitely, we're going to see it in the next slides, how we use these different types of scopes for the pen test to cover and secure Personio all around.
Wonderful. Okay, everybody, just to break it up a little bit, we'd love to hear from you. So we have a quick poll. How many components of an offensive security program are you doing today? So none, maybe you're not thinking about it this way in general. One, maybe you're just doing your annual broad scoped pen test for compliance purposes to check the box. Two, you're kicking things into gear and you're doing both the broad scope and the narrow scope test as new features are being released. But you haven't quite gotten to that continuous monitoring stage yet. Or three, way to go. You're doing all of them. We'll leave the poll open for about 30 seconds or so, be a minute. Not seen any come in yet. If the poll's not working, you want to throw them in the chat, that would be welcomed as well. Oh, here we go. Let's see. We have 13 votes so far. 6 of you are doing 2, so 46% of the group here. Awesome work. And so far, nobody out of the 13 who are voted have chose none, so way to go. Awesome. Sorry, I had to toddle out of my slides here to find the responses. So let me just go back. And Frank Kelly, who's on the line, he says 2. Awesome. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna pull up my slides here. There they are. Oops. Little technical difficulties here. Working off one screen. My apologies, everybody. There they are. Perfect. Well, thank you all for participating. So moving on to why is it important to think about offensive security in this way? So why is continuous testing important to Personio? I personally would love to hear from Arnau, who's been so successful at this. So we would love to hear you talk a little bit about, why is continuous testing key to running a strong security program? Could you tell us a little bit about how this is so vital to your success at Personio?
Yeah, definitely. So it's what I was mentioning before, right? So code is deployed every day, code changes every day. If you run one test per year, you have, exactly 1 year since the point of time where something very easy to exploit that could lead to like a significant data loss can be introduced and you don't know about it, right? So instead of having that traditional one point in time pen test that you do yearly, we rather do this same pen test, which I'm going to go deeper on in the next slides. And then we do this narrow pen test. So every time we have a new feature that is released, we're going to have a very small pen test, sometimes like 16, 24, or 30 hours, like an agile pen test, to test only the part of the code that is changing. Yeah, well, like I'm also touching on this in the next slide, but it's very easy to do this with Cobalt in the way that when we schedule a pen test, we can directly say, okay, these are the 3 URLs that have been changed, right? And we have full control of that because we can see it in the code. And then the pen testers only test OAST 10 or the ASBS over those endpoints. So we have like, a lot of depth in 2 or 3 or 4 endpoints, depending on the service that we're testing. But with teams also moving fast and shifting priorities, it is true that sometimes it's also difficult to know what to test, right? So if you have a small engineering team, maybe you're speaking with them at the office every day. When the team is distributed and has several hundred people, it's difficult to know what everyone is working on. So one of the initiatives that we're trialing now is to trigger pen tests based on code changes, right? So we have our GitHub instance, we have all our repositories, we have like a script that is going to check how much the code is changing. For those services where we see that in a fixed period of time, let's say 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, the code has changed substantially, and we can also add other factors. For example, does the service have GDPR data? Is the service infrastructure critical? Like stuff like that, we can have like a prioritization of what is more important for us, and that's what we'll test first.
Thanks for sharing, Arnau. It's a really cool initiative. I know being on my side of the house here at Cobalt, customer facing, I often hear that prioritizing assets can be a struggle. So there's limited time, little limited resources and budgets, and oftentimes there's like a competition for what asset are we going to test first, where are we going to focus. So basing priority of testing off of code changes makes really great sense and almost simplifies that process. So building Personio's offensive security program, we've heard a little bit about, what your primary goals are from a big picture stance, but I know you've been on a journey of major growth and maturity at Personio, having grown your team five-folds over the last just few years, and also maturing to adhere to certifications like ISO 27001. Could you please share a little bit about this journey in more detail and kind of how you've had this rapid success?
Sure. It has a very exciting journey. So when I joined Personio 4 years ago, we were a total of 5 security team members. So I joined with another engineer, 5 in total. And, and of course, we were focusing on the day-to-day security needs of the business, but we knew there were a lot of gaps to close, right? We started growing and our maturity grew accordingly. Uh, During this time, we have implemented multiple security programs, and as you mentioned, we have the ISO 27001 certification. Today, Personio has 27 individuals, including security analysts, engineers, security engineers, compliance managers, security engineering managers, TPMs, and we also have a director of security. We are organized in different teams. So we have GRC, governance, risk and compliance. We have product security, cloud security, corporate security, and operations security. The pentesting and bug bounty capabilities are owned by the security operations team, which I'm a part of. As for our program evolution, this would be like the when, how, and why we teamed up with Cobalt. So we partnered with you folks more than 3 years ago, and we chose Cobalt due to positive past experiences in the security team and because of your reputation and commitment to best practices in offensive security. The initial problem that we were trying to solve was to get a clean pentest report to our customers. That is a pentest report where all the findings are fixed or risk accepted. We had some not that great experiences in the future with previous providers where sometimes we got like theoretical findings reported or findings when you were trying to reproduce them you actually couldn't, and then we would ask the provider, hey, like maybe this shouldn't be a finding, and their answer was you need to accept this risk. But for us this was dangerous because to our point of view this could cause confusion to our customers about the risk that well um, so Cobalt has been very attentive to these details, and every time that a finding has been reported, we have like the lead of the pen test. I'm not sure how much folks are familiarized with how Cobalt works, but usually you get several pen testers. One of them acts as a lead, so he's going to review the vulnerabilities to ensure that the pen test is consistent. It's always good to have like another level of review, and then also when if there's any disagreement, we can discuss it with you. And of course, I want to give kudos to our CSM, Marta, because like she has been with us for this like 3 years and a half, and yeah, it's really great to have her. So going back to the story, after the first goal was done, which was the clean pen test report was achieved from the security team, we thought, okay, how can we best embed pen testing into our SSDLC, right? And not only how, but how can we embed it as early as possible? And this one we created what we internally call the on-demand penetration testing. This is like a very lightweight internal security offering where we created a guideline for the development teams. We socialized it and we presented it into the different forums that we have internally. And what this guideline says is that when certain conditions are met, they proactively reach out to us and ask us to trigger a pen test. So instead of so the goal of this was to change a little bit the pressure on the security team and rather put them on development teams, in the sense that we have like maybe 40 or 30 something development teams. It's very difficult to know what each one of them is doing at every time and if they need a pen test or not. But if they have the guidelines on why a pen test is needed and when it is needed, then they can reach out to us directly. Some of these conditions in which we trigger a pen test are major architectural changes, the addition of a new third-party integration, or new product features that we also announce to our customers. Nevertheless, this is only one of the ways in which we start pen tests. Other triggers for pen tests are security reviews, where the product security team might ask a pen test as a requirement for a successful security review, and company-wide announcements, where the security team might proactively still reach out to a team and ask them to trigger a pen test if we see something new that has been released that maybe flew under our radar.
Great work, Arnau. Truly impressive advancement to your program over just 3 years. When you spoke about evolving maturity and where Cobalt fits in, I think so many can relate to just how important a collaborative partner is when it comes to the end result. So we all kind of put a lot of pressure and emphasis up front to the pen test prep, the engagement itself, but the report output is so key and critical. So I'm really glad to hear that things are going smoothly on that output.
Sure. So
So
let's
how?
go.
Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So let's go point by point. Regarding the comprehensive offensive security services, so Personio at the moment relies on Cobalt for 90% plus of our pen test. The rest is done internally. And of these pen tests, I would say 80% is Web plus API, which are the tests that cover our web applications and APIs and the majority of our product. Moreover, we also run the mobile application pen test every year. That is one for iOS and one for Android. And this last year, we also did an LLM test to our Personio AI assistant and the red team engagement. So, yeah, thanks, Praveen. I hope I'm pronouncing the name well. So let's talk about like AI and LLM, right? So AI is becoming mainstream and everyone is embedding LLMs directly into a product, right? For security, the risks of LLMs were more important than ever. And this is why I was very happy to hear from Cobalt that one of your core members is actively participating in defining the OWASP LLM top 10 risks. And you had already had a methodology and an offering and well, you were up to date with the task. In our product particularly, we don't use custom-made LLMs, but rather plug into one of the well-known models. But nevertheless, there was a lot of questions internally about like, what did we have to do? How risky was this, right? So we decided to launch this LLM test with you, and to be honest, it provided great value. For me, the surprise was, so like one thing is when you see the OWASP top 10 LLM risk and you see them listed. The other thing is when you see them exploited in your product, right? For me, it was a different feeling. And what was more important were the reputational risks and hallucinations, right? So for example, there were some cases where the LLM could say a feature we already had was not available, right? And that if it's a prospect, then that can turn into a loss of sale. Or another, they could give incorrect information about Personio, right? So misleading the customer into a negative experience and potentially reputational loss. And the next point would be the seamless team extension. As I was mentioning before, 90% of our pen testing effort done with Cobalt, the rest internal. And how we like to see our security providers is as a pseudo extension of our security team, right? That is why when I was talking about the on-demand penetration testing, it was so important for us to make it lightweight. And to be honest, what we're trying to do in the on-demand pen test is we have a form where we're asking data to the development teams, which is, it doesn't map one-to-one, but it's quite similar to the one you need to provide to launch an agile test or a comprehensive test, right? So by doing this, we get the information directly from the developers, we share with you, and then we have the Slack Connect module where we put development teams and pen testers right together so they can collaborate, and if they have questions about the going to be tested, they can ask them directly. Yeah, why we do that? The main goal is because we need to alleviate the pressure to the security team. For me, when I scheduled pen test in the past, of course, with other providers, and when I remember having the first call, scheduling the test for 2 months in advance, then having the purchase order being sent and signed it was a nightmare, right? Like it's so much of a headache that I might do the test myself just to save time. That is why we try to do it like as lightweight as possible. Also, as our platform is quite big and complex, we try to prioritize pen testers which have a good track record on web application, including CVEs, which is information that you have publicly, or pen testers that have already done a previous engagement with us. The only things that we're currently testing internally are internal-facing applications, in which by convenience, VPN, like closed environments, it's just easier to test internally. And then we go to the point of early vulnerability detection. So in Personio, we see bug bounty one step earlier, pen testing one step earlier than bug bounty. While bug bounty tests are done on already released features, our on-demand pen tests are run on tenants that have feature flags enabled with new functionality. And now I want to briefly explain what a feature flag is. So a feature flag is a way to release code in chunks and in percentages, right? So the development team writes a new functionality, they add it behind a feature flag, it's called like that, and then they have an application where they can say, okay, now release this new feature to 5% of the users. If they don't see anything, any errors spiking up, they can release it to 5% more. So this is super useful to us because what we do is when we run the pen test, we run it in a tenant with a feature flag enabled. So the pen testers are actually able to test code that it's not even close to being in production. And then the theory is that in a successful pen test, the majority of vulnerabilities, including low-hanging ones and also complex ones, will be reported. And then this allows the development team to fix them before releasing the product, and also important at a fixed price. And then as a next step, we have the bug bounty researchers testing this and going like deeper into their verticals, right? And the last point, which would be as pen test kickoff. So if you've been in the security sector for a while, I'm sure this story is not new to you. It's a Friday afternoon, you're starting to prepare for the weekend, and the development team reaches out. They're going to start releasing a new feature to customers in 1 week, and they have now only learned that a pen test is a requirement. If your pen test scheduling times are of several weeks in advance, there's not much you can do, actually. Maybe you can trigger an internal pen test if you have the capacity, and that is a big if with such a short notice. With Cobalt, we're able to schedule a pen test with 2 days notice, right? So if the development team reaches out on Friday, we plan the pen test to start on Monday, and we can have a report before they start releasing the product to the customers, which, great in terms of security, right? So the speed of planning for us is really, really, really important.
Thank you so much, Arnau. I'm really glad to hear that what we think are our strong suits here, like our differentiators, or why customers love us or come back, are working well for you guys and really maximizing your security efforts. So speed to test, speed to test your development cycle, lead times, scale by utilizing our platform and coming together with your CSMs and TPMs, an extension of your team, to help build that framework and really roll out that approach, and an expertise for those who don't work with us yet. By leveraging our testers, they have an average of 11 years experience of testing, which is really neat. So thank you so much, Arnau. So your statistics tell a really good story with Cobalt and all of the hard work and vision that you have. In the last 13 months, talking to Marta and yourself, you've performed a total of 15 pen tests and a red team engagement. Can you tell us about the program and why you chose each of these services to complement the testing, and maybe some details on the outcomes of the engagements itself or the goals that you are looking to achieve?
Sure. So as you were saying, like 15 pen tests in 13 months, I'm going to
Yeah.
start with the broad scope pen test, right? So the current state of our pen testing program is that we do 2 comprehensive pen tests to the full application yearly. This is a test that includes more than 200 hours of testing each, and then we do several on-demand pen tests well, you call them agile pen tests, right? To scope functionalities. The reason why we do 2 comprehensive pen tests every year instead of 1, which could be maybe the norm, right? What people can expect, you do 1 pen test a year. It's like kind of is so that we can always have a pen test report that we can share with our customer customers, which is not older than 1 year, right? So in this way, we test every 9 months, and we allow for 3 months for the development teams to fix the vulnerabilities and then release the pen test report. So any customer of Personio can ask for a pen test report, and they know that it won't be more than 1 year long or 1 year old. And then during the last year, we've done these 2 full application pen tests and then 12 on-demand pen tests, which include our mobile applications, sorry, our Personio AI system, which was the LLM test that I was referring to, and others too, like functionalities of the product. And lastly, the red team engagement.
It's a lot of work in a short period of time. Thanks, Arnau. Oftentimes, after putting all that hard work and effort in, it's hard to measure the effectiveness of what you've just performed. How do you measure the effectiveness, or what metrics do you track at the end of the day?
Yeah, so some of the metrics that we track are that vulnerabilities are mitigated within SLA, number of high and critical vulnerabilities reported over time, that new code in production has been properly security reviewed and tested before reaching production, right? So the standard thing. We also keep a close eye on risk acceptances to make sure that they have been done with valid reasons, and regularly review them in case we need to communicate its risks in a more proactive way, let's say.
Awesome. That's great to hear. I love that you have realistic goals as well and are also like very mindful of how you can be most effective in your approach by focusing on like not necessarily reaching perfection, but simplifying it and focusing on the things that have changed the most. Makes good sense. So we've heard about all the history in your career and the hard work that you've done over the last 3 years at Personio to date. But I'd love to kind of understand how you plan to leverage Cobalt further. Your security moves fast, things are always changing. We're trying our best to be one step ahead of all that. Can you share a little bit about what your future goals are and how you are setting up your security program for success in the future?
Sure. So we have a very good success story from a recent pen test that we did, where a specific type of vulnerability that hadn't been reported like in a lot of years in Personio was reported. And the only reason why they were able to find that was because for our pen tests, we allow list the IPs of Cobalt's VPN into our infrastructure, right? And when we saw that, of course, all the alarms from security rang, right? And we were like, we didn't know we could have these gaps in the product. We did a thorough review, but then the thought came to mind: what if we were to provide virtual machines with the code to the pen testers, right? And with this, get to a full white box pen testing approach. The rationale behind this is that this would allow them to go through the code when testing the application, potentially finding more vulnerabilities and potentially of a higher severity. As a pen tester, at the end of the day, the more context that you have, the better you can secure an application. We're working to do this. I would say it's a capacity challenge at the moment, because of course from security we have this saying, which is trust but verify, and we keep our code very well guarded. So when providing this VM, we want to make sure it has all the logs being sent to the SOC, that the SOC knows that the engagement is happening and have a close eye on the activity, so that we make sure everything is correct. Then, besides that, we will be running our AWS audit to discover improvements that we could do in our cloud environment. We're looking for architectural changes that would make sense, IAM roles that need adjusting, all these type of things. And then we're also starting to do more and more code reviews, so internal code reviews based on SaaS tools, as we're implementing a new SaaS and SCA provider into our tooling. We will also continue to expand our red and blue team capabilities, and having more engagement between the red and blue teams is seen as a high impact area. As to how Cobalt fits into all of this, we ran our first red team ever with you folks back in July. And it was very successful in raising some awareness of some of the gaps that we had, especially in our endpoints, in our user stations. We're currently working to remediate that with IT and corporate security, And although we see the red teaming slash adversary simulation capability mostly internal because we want to keep the blue-red team pair operating efficiently, we also want external validation to discover more vectors and gaps that we might have missed, right? And this is where Cobalt, with its expertise, can help us to go into a state-of-the-art red teaming capability.
Thanks, Arnau. I love how you called out that these goals are based on capacity. Goals are just ideas, as we all know, if we don't have the people to take action on them. And in every conversation I'm having, again, on the customer front, I'm dropping the idea of a code review. I'm dropping that knowledge everywhere. Reviewing source code is truly a necessary review to mitigate exploits and recognize security flaws as early as possible. A secure code review especially pairs well with all of the web and API tests that you've been running. So glad to hear that's working out. Cool. So now just a little bit of exciting news for Cobalt. So in line with the programmatic approach to testing and having the right metrics at your disposal to track success, I'm really excited to give you a sneak peek into two new features that we're rolling out. One is currently available on the platform. If you're a customer today, you'll see it marked in beta, and the other one is coming shortly. So benchmarks. This is the first one we wanted to chat with you about today. This one is super exciting. We're hearing from customers often that they don't really know how to compare themselves to industry peers. So this one's been long awaited. So within your organization's insights page, you can now gain a deeper understanding of security's effectiveness. You can validate your strategies and identify areas for improvement with confidence, all while solidifying trust in our platform as a comprehensive security partner. Some of the key features are highlighted on the left there with the visual of what it looks like in the platform on the right. We have the industry comparison, so customers can compare their security posture and, importantly, their remediation efforts against similar organizations. And then we have something called data-driven insights. This is really leveraging data from our state of pentesting report. And then actionable intelligence, so helping customers to identify areas of strengths, weaknesses, and guiding them through a security strategy. The next one, a highly anticipated one as well, the calendar planner. We have something in the platform if you're a customer today called the planning feature. In my honest opinion, this supersedes all of that. My most anticipated feature personally, it's an intuitive and functional calendar component on our planning page. You won't see it yet. You should see it, I think, next quarter. But it will enhance, excuse me, enhance visibility and management of all schedule events. So it really will provide that single pane of glass to visualize all engagements, including pen testing, digital risk assessments, secure code reviews, while also being able to allocate your credits. So, really that planning page. Where's my budget going? What assets am I going to test? Really align your credits to what you're looking to do. In addition to its planning functionality, you can also clone and draft pen tests as well. So you can start to work out of this page. If you're a customer and you're interested in learning more about these features, I have your back, or your CSM will. So please reach out to us after the call to your CSM. We're super excited about these, and we hope you are too. Jumping into a poll. So one last poll before Q&A, and I'm really glad to see there was a question dropped in the chat already. If you would like to meet with one of our experts to learn about more about building an offensive security program at Cobalt, please choose yes, or maybe not right now. I'll leave this poll open for another minute or two. If you can't access the poll for technical issues, feel free to drop it in the chat. Awesome. I'm not seeing any any polls this time around? Maybe I have the technical issues. Awesome. Well, we can certainly move forward to the Q&A. Are there any questions in the chat? Not yet. Sorry, bear with me. I'm just getting back to my page here. Cool. We did have some questions come in early. So now I can start with these ones and we'll see if any more come in. Or Praveen, I see in chat that you asked a question. Was that answered in Arnau's discussion on AI, LLM, and red teaming, or did you want him to hop in there a little bit deeper?
I can, I can give a little bit more detail if he's interested.
Sure.
For the AI ML pen test, what you need to have in mind is that it's set like a web pen test, right? So there's the OWASP 10 that they're going to follow for the web pen test plus internal methodology. For LLM, it's the same thing. They have their internal methodology. They're going to try to focus on the OWASP LLM top 10 risks, and you get a report with that, right? So you give the LLM, they do the test. One thing that I was very happy about is that they do not only cover what would be the specific risks of an LLM, but also like let's say the more web and API related risks that you would also find in a regular pen test, right? Because one doubt that I had when scheduling this pen test was like, come on, do I need to schedule one pen test for the LLM and one pen test for the web and API, or can we do this in a more unified way and the pen test cover both of them? For the red team exercise, it's please man correct me if I'm wrong, but it's more of a tailor-made exercise,
Yep.
right? So you sit
Totally custom.
exactly, and you explain what you want to achieve with the exercise. You define like the scope, and then it goes on from there.
Thank you so much, Arnau. Excuse me. Arnau, you mentioned moving offensive security earlier in the SDLC. What are some of the biggest challenges you faced in integrating pen tests into the development cycle at Personio?
Yeah, it's what I was mentioning before, right? We have like, I don't know, 30 or 40, I lost count of how many development teams we have at Personio. So it's very,
Hmm.
very difficult to know um, what is being shipped, but also who knows, like who owns what is being shipped, right? So we get a vulnerability. Of course, from the URL, you more or less can guess who owns it, but sometimes it's not that clear. During the last years, we have been working on an automated system for assignment of vulnerabilities, right? So we have our asset register internally that has a list of URLs. The moment we get a vulnerability, we match that and we can quickly assign it to the team. We're going to tag the vulnerability with the GitHub repository ID, and then the teams already get the notification that something has been found on their services. So in this way, we have worked so that the manual toil of managing and reporting vulnerabilities was as small as possible.
Thanks so much. Praveen, I see a part two to your question. Did red team play a role in tabletop exercising?
Not in our case. If I get the question, no, we didn't. It wasn't a combined thing. For us, it was a red team exercise, which was like not public internally, so only security and some specific folks in leadership knew that this was happening. And
Hmm.
the goal was to also measure the response of the SOC and measure like what was being triggered internally after we were receiving some valid malicious alerts.
Thanks, Arnau. Praveen, I hope that answered your question. And I'm not seeing any more in the Q&A, so there could be something on my end. In case you have any questions, please drop them in the webinar chat because I am seeing those questions. Another question I have for you, Arnau, while we're waiting to see if any more come in there is, I'd be curious to know what are one or two like essential elements of your comprehensive program that you believe are often overlooked by other companies?
Um, for me and for the majority of the, like for the security team at Personio, I would say what we always keep top of mind is how to enable developers to move fast and secure rather
Mm-hmm.
than putting blockers in the way that slow them down, right? Because in a startup or scale up, growth is everything, right? You get you're in the wheel, you need to continue growing.
Yeah.
Um, Code is deployed daily, and there is a constant competition amongst startups in the system to see who is able to release the best product at the earliest time, right? So if we start adding toll gates in the pipeline and asking for manual reviews before code is deployed, developers are going to be less efficient and less fast.
Mm-hmm.
So when the question comes about like velocity versus security, we always try to find like a good balance where yeah they're moving as fast as possible while keeping the controls in place and the data secure, which is always the most important. Um, Two essential elements. I mean, all of them are essential elements for me, I would say. Um, of course, like
Yeah,
I,
it's
I
hard to
think
pick.
I think like thinking at the time when I started at Persona, I think the a clean pen test report is super important because it gives that trust to the customers that you're doing your homework in terms of security. And
Mm-hmm.
also I think getting some early security testing done manually, it's also good because you can find some low-hanging fruit, some API credentials that are being leaked here or there, or some endpoint which should be internal that it has, it is publicly accessible. Some of these things that can really cause damage and that some hours of
Mm-hmm.
testing already detect them.
That makes sense. A little bit more from Praveen in the chat. Was there any application sites data centers departments excluded in scope for ISO 27001?
Oh, I'm sorry, please repeat the question for me. Like the GRC team is the one that managed the ISO 27001. I provided some
Yeah,
evidence, but this specific one, I don't know it from the top of my head.
no problem. Thank you so much. And keep the questions coming in the chat. Again, guys, I can't see anything in Q&A, so please feel free to drop anything in there. I do have one more question that I'm particularly interested in asking you right now while we're waiting. Um, can you elaborate on a specific time or engagement where Cobalt's manual pen testing identified a critical vulnerability that, say, Bug Bounty might have missed, and what was the impact of that?
Yeah, actually, I've jumped a bit to this answer before in another slide, but I can give you more detail here. So recently this year, a Cobalt pen tester was able to find an SQL injection,
Yeah.
and to be honest, it was like a big surprise. I remember like sharing it with the development teams and some developers saying like it was 13 years since I seen an SQL injection. I didn't know they were still possible, and they are, right? And the question is like, why hadn't SQLi injections been reported in the past? Um, in the bug bounty, for example, right? The reason
Yeah.
is because of the WAF, right? We were able to like actually like sometimes we do it. We allow list the APs of the pen testers. Uh, but in this case, like we weren't doing it, and the pen tester reached out and was like, "Hey, folks, I've seen some weird behavior that I'd like to continue testing, but I think the WAF is blocking me. Is there any chance that you can add me to the allow list?" And we did, and he delivered. He found an SQLi was able to achieve massive impact. The impact of
Mm-hmm.
an SQLi, and then this triggered a lot of things internally, right? So we did a proactive review of our code base for some specific patterns that could lead to this. We did further testing. We did awareness to the whole engineering organization that this had happened, and how to prevent it in the future. And yeah, just to keep in mind that WAF bypasses are a real thing. If you are in
Mm-hmm.
security Twitter, like every day you see like someone saying like if you put this payload, it's going to bypass this WAF. So if the only thing that it takes is a WAF bypass to exploit such a vulnerability, then it's good that we have the WAF, but we can rely only on it. And I think that's where, for example, pen testing comes strong compared to bug bounty.
Thanks, Arnau. Awesome. With the rise of AI, what were your biggest concerns when doing your first LLM pen test for Personio AI assistant? and how did Marta and team address those?
Yeah. So the first LLM pen test was a big learning, right? So I'm skeptical in general. So I part of me was like, this is all so new. Like I'm a bit skeptical of what is going to be found that I cannot found in top risk for AWS Bedrock or top risk for. But actually, like when we ran the test, as I was mentioning before, we found some reputational risks and some misbehavior from the LLM that was quite surprising. There were some which weren't like super critical. So, for example, one finding I remember now from the top of my head was that the LLM was generating shell code if you were asking it to do it. Okay, that's true. It's a finding. We now have a control in our prompt that says, refrain from doing these, and these things. So, in general, it was a great assessment because first of all, the findings were real. When we saw, like a question, I think it was like what I mentioned before, like, how can I use this feature? And the LM was saying like, sorry, this feature is not available. I was like, what the hell? You have it here in the sidebar, right? So when we see these things, right, then, we spoke with the team. They added some controls in the pre-prompt to make sure that some of this bad behavior wasn't happening. They updated the latest data to the LLM so that it had all the context about these new features that maybe it had missed. So it was like it was quite impactful. And also, I would say one thing that also the team loved is that the majority of the vulnerabilities could be fixed directly in the pre-prompt. So it's not like they had to change a lot of code; they just had to add some instructions. So it was a quick fix also from their end. So it was a win-win situation.
Thanks so much. Anyone else online? Have you run AI tests or are thinking about it? Would love to hear in the chat. Well, we're waiting to see what might come in. On my end, kind of a last closing thought, and would be much appreciated from you, Arnau. So for companies looking to build out and mature their offensive security program, what's one piece of advice that you'd offer based on your own journey and experience with Cobalt?
Yeah, it's what I was mentioning before. Always strive for the company to move fast while being secure, right? So I've seen so many security professionals, which is like, what do you do if the development team does that? And the answer is you block it. You add a control in the pipeline that you need to approve it before they can release to production. And then you have security review all the merge requests so that every time something needs to get deployed, security has given the thumbs up. That doesn't scale, right? You cannot have like 20 security professionals just clicking accept MR after doing a lightweight review. So it's all about finding this balance, like what is the acceptable level of security you want to be, and how do you get to this level while allowing the engineers to move as fast as possible and releasing product as fast as possible.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's no more questions. We can give everyone 5 minutes, and thank you so much, Arnau, for your time. I've learned a lot from our conversations and really appreciate hearing your story, and all the hard work you've done at Personio is very impressive. Happy for you to keep on moving. And thank you all for joining. It's been wonderful to have you participate with us. We really enjoyed having you on here. Reach out to your CSMs if you're a customer and are interested in hearing about any of the services Arnau talked about today that you might not be familiar with, or any of the new features that will be coming available. We'd love to hear from you. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Megan. It was a pleasure.